intro.
Oh, there we go.
I wonder if the audience can hear us.
It's fun. We're gonna talk for science.
0 people. So yeah. So let's. I'm just gonna put the word out there while the timer is going on.
I mean, I'm pretty used to talking to 0 people, so.
The last. The
audio is coming.
Oh, we have 2 people. All right, and we are live, guys. The last live stream clocked up to about 200 views, so
nice.
It's not nobody watching us. So hello, everybody. We are live, and I'm Paige New of Newbie Dice. We have my co-host.
I guess
that's not.
I'm just here. I'm having fun. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Paige is doing
Adam
all the work, giving me some credit.
Yeah, I mean, you're the charismatic one on this channel. So we are joined today by 2 guests, Sean Polka and Steve Foster. Sean with his recently semi-viral post on Fanatics, which is why we've invited him here to continue the discussion in voice and in full picture glory as well. Okay, so Tom Ennis, I see you in the chat. Let me see if I can work this. All right, awesome. And while we probably wait for more people to come online and watch us, let's do a quick round of introductions. We'll start with Sean. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially when did you start playing Kings of War?
Well, I started Kings 2020, I want to say. I had gotten some 3D printers and was like, hey, I should probably do something with these miniatures I'm making and painting and have sitting around on shelves. And our local hobby shop owner was like, hey, there's this game called Kings of War where you can use whatever mini you want. I was like, oh, that sounds sweet. But I'd played War Machine, I'd played Warhammer Fantasy, I played Malifaux, I played Guild Ball, just all the miniature games before that. So, yeah. And I like Kings. It's great.
And
there is a local resurgence. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, not everybody knows probably where you're from and things like that, Sean. So I know, but why don't you tell everybody else?
So I am from the West region. I live in Reno, Nevada. Yeah, it's a nice place.
And you're a habitual Forces of Nature player, so you're loving life right now, right?
Yes and no. I mean,
okay.
It kind of feels like the whole army got, rapidly changed. So I'm still kind of like not entirely certain how I want to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, the 4th edition changes were interesting. And now this new fracture change really changes up the whole thing, especially because like everything I had in core, which was basically Longhorns and Earth Elementals, are either not there or not in core. So there's a lot of changes. It's very much herd oriented, and I've always played a little bit more Elementals. I really loved playing Verdant back in the day, Kapoko and Tree Herders and things like that. And it feels like it's drifted a little bit more towards herd, which is fine. It's just I guess it's time to adapt and change and grow and murder non-nature-y things.
Mm-hmm. So you're part of the group that spawned from Reno, huh? The one that Jeremy always talks about on Countercharge.
Yeah. We have a pretty good group up here. We get between 10 and 20 players, probably 12 of us that are fairly regular. Boo, Kapoko. No. Yay, Kapoko. He was so nice.
It's gone, right? Kapoko is gone.
He was non-aggressive. He never attacked anyone. But yeah, no.
Behind the tree herder.
We have a good group up here. Like I said, we have about 10 to 20 people. We host some local tournaments, and then there's another group down in Southern California that we interact with. That we have a lot of fun. So pretty healthy meta, I would say.
Right. And your local game store is the one that introduced you to Kings when you were 3D printing. Like, I'm just curious, is the local game store pretty cool about 3D printing?
Yes. In fact, the local game store owner has, I think, 8 or 9 printers of his own.
Wow.
He likes to buy broken printers and repair them because he's kind of crazy like that. But yeah, he actually plays Kings. He actually was meant to play in Best of the Rest when we were hosting here in Reno.
Right.
And then something came up and he had to drop out. But he was there Friday night. He was there part of Saturday. But yeah, no, he likes 3D printing. He loves having us there. He loves Keris.
So close.
Yeah, I also miss Keris. But yeah, no, he really likes 3D printing. He's a little bit kind of like, hey, maybe not things that are exactly duplicating IP. You know, like maybe we shouldn't be doing that to certain crowds. But obviously, that's not a Kings of War issue. So,
right. And we have a former master in the chat. His name just slipped me. Adam, could you help me out?
Luke. We got Luke here.
Luke, what's his last
Fraser?
name?
Fraser.
Luke Fraser, yeah.
Yeah.
Is he the only Canadian US master?
Yes.
Technically, yes.
He is.
Yeah. So welcome
Because
to
Ray Shields is not a real dark horse. So
just calling him out to win one of these years.
that's right.
He's good.
Right, let's move on to Steve.
Hey,
Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What have you played and when did you start Kings of War?
I actually started Kings of War in first edition. I started playing in 2012. My good friend Whit, he owns Critical Hit Games in Abingdon, Maryland. He and I started we're like saw first edition Kings of War. Like, this is a cool alternative to Warhammer Fantasy because neither of us like playing it. So yeah, we multi-based in 2012. Had a lot of fun with it and kind of fell out of it for a couple of years. But with second edition dropping in 2015, we got back into it, and we taught Jake Karapika how to play and dragged him into it, and we kind of developed a group in the Northern Virginia area, which is Alex Chavez and Mike Austin and Jerry Greek and Mike Adkins. And then we've also migrated kind of north and east to get the Nerdhammer guys and Chet and the Loaded Dice guys and Marcelo and the Battle Pilgrim. So we have a really good, healthy meta, a lot of cool groups in the Mid-Atlantic. And for those of you who don't know, we, in 2022, Bart Kohler came up with the Cornwell Cup, named after our friend Jesse Cornwell. And at all GTs, the clubs basically get to fight over the cup. And there's Bart orders nameplates, and we have, now we have 4.5 years of, winner, the club winners. So it's a really cool thing. We have a lot of pride in it. That's, the Mid-Atlantic's really we've kind of, interest has kind of waned a little bit with fourth edition, but I think it's starting to pick back up.
Is the Dojo group still playing?
Oh, yeah.
I know.
And Dojo, yes.
Okay.
A lot of them have gone back to War Machine, but like Mark Howard and Joe Ferry, Mike Ireland still a little bit are back to playing Kings. But a lot of the Dojo group went back to War Machine.
I know they were teetering at the end of third, and I didn't know how fourth treated them. So
yeah, like Derek and Brad, Derek kind of got it decided went back to play War Machine.
And I know Gabe talk
I don't know if you've seen it in person. Gabe, yeah, he ran at ACO this year.
side of things.
Guys,
Club, are you a part of?
publish it, which was on it over earphone, premium subscription, costly, but it's really a quality of life improvement because it allows you to listen to YouTube videos on the background, and you can have it as a pop-up video. So while you're doing other things on the phone, you can still listen or watch your videos.
experiencing lag with the live, the buying super with that. So may not, but
Yeah, it's off of yeah, and it's fine on us to deal with the lags now. Enough to remember the machine, the game, because they're not has always.
I feel like a lot was there.
Yeah, we had a lot of old War Machine players who were like, "Oh, well, I'll just let me see how it is," and then we ran a local league, and we had 6, 7, 8 people, like brand new players, people I'd never seen before playing any other miniatures game, show up for these league games, and it was like, oh my god, this community grew so much faster than our Kings did. We haven't really lost any of our Kings players to playing War Machine, but we do tend to kind of like rotate through games and play different ones at different times. So there will be nights you come down and there's just no Kings games going because there's an Infinity game, and then there's a Moonstone game, and then there's Dead Zone or something like that, or Marvel Crisis Protocol, something like that. But yeah, War Machine has definitely picked up, and to be one of them. I think when it came out, I was like, oh, I still have all these Troll Bloods in a bag, lying around here. Let me pull them out and take a look, and then they announced 3D printing for a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm like, well, that's yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, and if these don't work out, maybe I just have another undead army for Kings, or it does, and I keep playing War Machine. So
I am an ex-War Machine player as well. I dipped out towards the start of their 3rd edition. For me, of course, the company wasn't handling the game well at that time. Deja vu was happening with Kings right now. But I dipped out mainly because of the game itself. The inherent problem with the game is the complexity creep. You just have to have encyclopedic knowledge of what your opponents can do, especially with the different casters and all that. And right now, I'm playing War Machine casually. I picked up the Signa Grave Diggers. I threw away my entire War Machine collection back then because at that time the game was pretty much dead. There was not much demand for the models, and then I am running out of space, so I just decided I'll just throw them all away. Just keep a few of the models that I really like. So the new War Machine came out, and I just bought into Grave Diggers. I would say the sculpts are really nice, but the design aesthetics are quite extreme. So I find myself only gravitating to the looks of Signa Grave Diggers. The rest are a little bit over the top for me. And played it again. The model count has reduced because there used to be 6 and 10 man squads. Now it's 3 and 5 men. But boy, oh boy, each model is like they combine 2 units into one. So it's got double the number of roofs. And for me, it's like, oh, this complexity creep problem is coming back to me again. It's like I have to remember. I mean, our crowd being older right now, we are more cordial about it. We kind of warn each other of what combos and what our stuff could do. But if we don't, it's like you're totally lost trying to remember what the opponent can do. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to play this casually. Kings will still be my main game. And let's segue into Sean's viral post right now. So to preface things, I would like to say that I think the 4 of us here and quite a bunch of people listening in are quite passionate about the game. We'll probably still be playing it, but there are some issues we have with the state of the game right now. And the reason for discussion is to hope for constructive feedback and criticism and hope that things will go in a better direction going forwards. So let's start things off with Sean. What has come over you to make that post? Semi-rant, semi-feedback, expecting to be trolled, but surprisingly very well received on the most part. So I think it went down from US Masters, right? And yeah, maybe Sean, you could start us off, and Adam, you could fill us in on the conversations at Masters.
So, I've been kind of hit or miss on fourth since it was announced. Some of the reveals, I kind of went, do we really need that? But there was a lot of people who were like, hey, give it a chance, maybe it's just not apparent what they're going for. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not seeing how it's all going to work out. And like, especially with like the battalion system, I don't know how well it'll work out. And we had a local player who's played the what is the other game that Alicia worked on that has that action? I think that action it worked really well. Like, okay, well, and some, I don't know. And I had some great games. Really enjoyed some of them, and then every once in a while a rule would come up, or in one case, several rules came up all together that were like, oh, this is not great. This isn't working. It doesn't feel like this is really driving. And I talked with several people who were there. Adam and I played first game, and we talked about it. Talked with Dustin after our third game, Dustin Howard, and was like, hey, your aim here was literally to highlight this issue. I think you did a good job. I think you proved your point. Because I hate it. And so, the rest of the weekend, I kind of talked with some other people and was feeling out the room. And then spent this last week kind of writing and rewriting and redrafting and significantly, I know it's long, but significantly shortening it, believe it or not. Because I could have gone the other way and just turned this into a novel. But I cut back on it, cut out some of the meaner comments that were in it, and decided, let me put this up, see how people feel about it. But I did, I wanted to go back and see what did Alicio say during these reveals? What did other people at Mantic say during these reveals? What was the goal behind some of these changes? Did we accomplish our goal? And I don't think we did. And so that's why I kind of wanted to include those in there, is to say, hey, where were we going and where did we end up? And I think the feedback is there that a lot of people kind of agree this wasn't the change that we wanted to see. And it's not necessarily the best way to move the game forward. So, which is unfortunate. But I did put that up and I was like, okay, well, let's duck and cover. Let's put on some flame retardant clothing. Let's, bunker down. And shockingly, not a huge negative feedback. A lot of people seem to be on the same kind of wavelength with me. Some people were like, hey, I don't agree with everything. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad we don't agree with everything. Let's work out where we are here. But I do think probably Mantic needs to kind of be aware of it. Ronnie did reply to the post, so he saw it. We'll see where we go with that. I think you're muted.
I'm surprised you didn't tag him.
I didn't think about it until afterwards, to be honest. I should have. But he saw it. He was there. So, hopefully he'll, look at some of the feedback, look at how the community are talking about it. I think there are some changes that would be quick and easy to make. And then I think there are some changes that are going to require some more work if they want to go that route, and they might not. So, it's their game.
No, I agree. And let's talk a little bit about some of the substance of what you threw out there, because I have a lot of the same stances that you do, Sean, and I think the main rule, like the core rules, have been talked about being, a step up, a step in the right direction from third edition. And I would say in general, yes. And that, a lot of people have issues with the army balance, which, is its own topic on each army. And I think there is room for improvement. And the aim ability, the moving and shooting versus standing still and shooting, change between third and fourth was the biggest one, and I think also the one with the most impact to the game. And I don't think it's the impact we were really looking for out of the game. I think it really simplified a lot of things and made it very clear that certain types of units, the ones that are standing still, are going to be the best shooters in the game. And then the units that have the 4 up to hit and have the potential to get a 3 up to hit for standing and shooting are also going to be the best units in the game. But then the units that I would argue were some of the more fun type of units to take with shooting, like the mobile shooting units, the Silver Breeze, maybe even Scorch Wings, maybe not, 8 hordes of them, but some Scorch Wings is fine, right? Like those were some of the more dynamic shooting that we saw in the game, and I think it really, was more in the spirit of Kings of War, which is a movement first game. It's all about movement. It's about playing scenarios, and let's be real, like just standing still and shooting, we would be probably better off just playing a historical war game with muskets and cannons, if that's what people really want to do. And I think that Kings of War, it just doesn't work for Kings of War. I took L's to Masters. I did the standing and shooting with the Elven Archers and stuff, and it's effective. It works just fine, but it's not fun. And I didn't have fun, and I know my opponents probably didn't have fun either. Sean, you probably attest to that. So I just don't understand what we're benefiting from this. And like you said, Sean, we look at what their thought process was early on and why they made the change, and it doesn't align with where we are now. So I think it is a rule that should be changed, but I don't think it's going to get changed. I think that they're pretty much married to the core rules of the game with 4th edition right now, and that's kind of sad in my mind, that where it is just, in my mind, it's objectively worse, right?
Yeah, let me jump in here. I think before we speak to that, I'd like to highlight towards the end of 3rd edition, a lot of units have steady aim. There were more units with steady aim than not. So it encouraged moving and shooting, right? And then when we have 4th edition with the change, there's also another big change to shooting, which is that you can't kill a unit unless it's devastated. You can at most waver a unit, right? So hang on, Steve's disconnected, so I'm reconnecting him.
Okay.
Right. So those are 2 major changes. And of course, with the change in shooting as well, being standing still, giving you the +1 bonus, it is mechanically the same as 3rd edition, that if you move, you got a -1 penalty. Mechanically, it sort of works the same. So what we essentially lost was the steady aim rule, that you can't move and shoot with a better stat. And of course, with that, you also have 4+ shooting, being able to aim into 3+. So it became really weird that, a lot of bow units, they have 5+. So they have to stand still to get that 4+, and including units that are supposed to move around and shoot, like Blade Stalkers, they're supposed to be moving around and shooting because they are a hybrid unit. They can get into combat later, but they don't. They used to have steady aim in 3rd edition. Now they don't. So, and then you give them the 5+ stat, which makes them have to stand still to get the same shooting as before. Whereas the 12-inch shooting, such as the trombones, the River Guard until they got nerfed to Oblivion, and now there's still a unit in the Northern Alliance Pack Hunters with the throwing spears option. They are still 4+ to shoot, so they can move around and shoot with their old stats, and then they could stand still and shoot with better stats at 3+. So the question is, because of the loss of steady aim, they have to balance it out, right? If I give a 12-inch shooting unit a 5+ shooting stat, that makes it too poor. The turn they move into range, they're shooting at 5+. If it's covered 6s, yeah. But yet, if they move into position and next round they stand still and shoot, they are hitting on 3+, which is too good. And I'm not sure why the trombones got 2 extra attacks with the addition change from 10 to 12 as well. So that really makes things worse and to the extremes. And of course, one new thing we have is that the magic spells, of course, most of them are classified as magic missiles now, which are affected by individual stealthy, and on top of most of them were already affected by cover in the past. But they can stand still and hit on 3+, which makes Blizzard awesome because it's a 30-inch range, so you can stand still from the first turn and just blast away at 3+, and it blasts D3, so it way outclasses Lightning Bolt right now. So, yeah. So then it brings into question: why do we need all these changes? Could we go back to the way it was before, where spells are hitting on 4+, and then just revert it? And the thing about shooting only wavering unless devastated kill, I think we can still explore that. If one of the issues was shooting being too little in the past, I think that could remain, and we can experiment with it further. But bring steady aim back in one form or another. Something shouldn't be able to hit on 3+. So if we are keeping this,
I was kind of thinking the same thing about if we went back to third edition kind of shooting, where we have you take away the magic missile from spells, and make the steady aim a thing again. Because the other thing, at the end of third, I played Forces of the Abyss extensively, and I played a shooting heavy list, so I took a lot of flame bearers, and those type of units aren't really a thing anymore. I'm trying them with 4 regiments of flame bearers now, but I'm always finding myself just standing still with them. They're not as good of a mobile strategy piece as they were before, and it doesn't feel as dynamic as, because you're in the game in the movement phase, and if you're not moving them, you're just kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'll stand still, and hopefully my other pieces can go win this actual game for me. But and then the unintent, I don't think there was really a lot of knowledge of how it would be received. That if we were to make war trombones on 3s, we're going to make boomers or the Night Stalker equivalent of boomers on 3s when they stand still. So, and all of those potential fixes are a enormous undertaking. You'd have to have some sort of 4.5 almost level of change if they wanted to do that. So I don't know what the solution is.
Well, and I think too, Adam was saying about it being a movement game, and you were saying about it kind of going back to cover and things like that. Alicio very much said, well, the +1 is supposed to balance out the -1 for cover. I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel like I see that as much cover on the board to kind of manipulate that. And then on top of that, they made hindered worse or more punishing. And so we have this issue where it's like, well, I want to be in the woods for cover, but I don't want to charge out of the woods because then I'm hindered, which is even worse. And Pathfinder doesn't stop being hindered from difficult or wooded. Strider is, I would say, more difficult to find, but in some cases it's easier depending on the faction you play. But then again, like I say that as playing Forces of Nature, but then Pathfinder used to be our shtick, so it's kind of like 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. And so it's like, if aim has to be a thing, do we need to loosen the cover rules and make it so cover's easier to get? Do we need to make hindered less impactful in some way? There's so many things. But yeah, it kind of sucks when an archer horde can step into the woods, halt for the rest of the game, and shoot, ignoring that and punishing people who charge them. And it's like, man, this is a double whammy of just making shooting better and movement worse, which was not the goal, at least as I read it.
Right. I think while you're thinking of fixes, I'll say, like, if it ain't broke in 3rd edition, we just revert back to what it was in 3rd edition. I think essentially getting back how shooting works in 3rd edition. Hello? Did you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Essentially bringing back to how it worked in 3rd edition would be fine. Bringing back steady aim in one form or another. My simple fix for this to implement steady aim in this current way is that the unit with steady aim always have the aiming bonus. So you can have your trombones, your pack hunters shooting on 5+ with the shooting stat of 5+, and says it always has the aiming bonus, which basically means it's always 4+. So then that would be back to how it worked before. So you can throw steady aim back to a lot of the units. Yep. And then and for spells, I don't think we need them to be hitting on 3+. So you can just have magic missiles not have the aiming bonus to bring things back. So I think if we could bring it back to the way it was before, it'd be fine, except that now, right, there's only one nerf value. There's no longer waiver stat, and you can only at most waiver a unit unless it's devastated. You could kill it off. So do you think that should remain? Would be my question for the panel.
Well, I do like the idea of bringing back a steady aim equivalent. The main thing, I think we've dug ourselves into a hole where we already have units profiles where it says shooting on 6s or shooting on 5s, but they're never actually shooting on that value. They're always shooting at 1 better, because like a Commodon shooting on 5s, it has the indirect rule, which means that it's going to ignore cover. So it's always going to be shooting on 4s. And we saw how oppressive those things were at US Masters. There was 3 armies, I believe, with 4 of them. And I know at least 2 of them finished extremely well, if not all 3 of them. So the shooting that some of these units can put out is clearly better than others. Yeah, speaking of the devil, Andy Patton himself complaining about shooting. Yeah, we're complaining about your shooting, bud. That's what we're really complaining about. So I think it's just an inherent flaw within the system.
Well, I think at heart, I mean, isn't this really all about salamanders being oppressive right now?
Salamanders and goblins. That's what we're here to complain about.
I mean, we've cloaked it in other language, but
yeah, So in truth, it's really about Dustin Howard, Travis Tim, and Andy Patton. Those are the 3 we're here to complain about. That's what this is all about here. So, but I think in an ideal world, if we could just scrap everything and start from the ground up, I think the best form of building an actual balance to shooting is to give different shooting units different roles within the shooting phase. So with 3rd edition, having units that move and shoot was extremely beneficial because there was no benefit for standing still at that point in time. So I think if there was some sort of a combination, I think you go back to a third edition rule where there's an inherent negative for moving and shooting, unless you have the steady aim special rule. But then you have certain units, specifically, I would say the units that are intended, like the archers, the like halfling rifles, kingdom men rifles, those types of units, they should have a special rule that allows them to benefit from standing still and shooting. So then you can have an interaction in the shooting phase, which would allow you to have some units that are meant to stand still and shoot, while other units are meant to move around the battlefield and still be effective with their shooting. Now, with this, obviously, their range profiles would need to be pointed appropriately. The range value needs to be the right value, things like this. But, the units that are intended to move and shoot, they shouldn't get a benefit if they stand still and shoot. But the units that are meant to stand still and shoot, they should have the inherent negative of moving and shooting. So if that was something, possible to do, like I said, if we were rebuilding 4th edition, that's what I would want to see out of the game, because I think that adds a dynamic to shooting and to units and their specific roles within the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting idea. And I agree with you that I miss units that were dedicated to moving and shooting. I think that's a far more interesting game to play. And I think bringing those back in some way would be really neat. I also think that having, not in old Warhammer Fantasy battles, you used to have artillery that was kind of more dedicated in certain ways to killing certain things. You had things that were better at killing high armor, but lower model count. You had things that were better at killing rabble, but, just bounced off of armor. And so I think that is like more specialized shooting is more interesting. Certainly having riflemen that have, higher armor piercing but lower number of shots. Things like that. Like that's good. Luke kind of asked, is there a way for shooting to be both strong and interactive? And yeah, I mean, I think it is, but I think it's also like, how much time and effort do you want to put into designing that? Because then that just becomes the third aspect of the game that you have to design around. And I think the goal was to reduce the impact of shooting. And so like, if that's the case, then I guess we're discussing the wrong aspect here, right? From their point of view. But yeah, I mean, I think like Andy's saying, yeah, units that move and shoot are fun. Units that stand and shoot are less fun, in my opinion, but there's a place for them. We just need to develop where that place is. And I think a lot of what you were saying with, hey, this rule for units that move and shoot, this rule for units that stand and shoot is good, because that starts delineating what those units are supposed to be doing more clearly. Whereas I think a blanket aim rule is not, to bring it back around. Yes. Because now, like, boomers were not meant to stand still and shoot, really, in my opinion. Like, that doesn't really feel like that's their role, but that's what they're doing. Same with pack hunters.
So they now move and shoot with their old stats, and then they get to stand still and shoot at even better stats, which is the problem we're having right now. Because
I think
lots of words to mention, we need steady aim back, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think spells are probably the biggest. Like every army except for halflings and Zerkali can get access to the spell list right now. And in my mind, the clear winners are Blizzard and Alchemist Curse. I took both of them, and there was only 2 times the entire tournament that my Blizzard Wizard moved. So in, what is that, 6 games, we'll say 6 rounds each. So in 36 turns, I moved twice. with a unit with the Blizzard Wizard. What are we doing?
And one of those is because I sent a greater air elemental to go hunt him.
Exactly. And then what did I do? I withdrew and I shot you anyway. Like,
yeah. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's another thing is like, do we want units to withdraw and still shoot?
No, I don't. I think withdrawing, you should forfeit your shooting unless maybe you have certain special rules like that feint rule. Maybe that could be actually useful for units that are dedicated for that type of interaction on the battlefield. But I think, again, if we're just doing blanket rules, anybody being able to benefit from these things just feels bad. There clearly needs to be some sort of specialization because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I like that you have to devastate a unit to break it from shooting. Like, I think that was a good change. Is there a world where you do something like a modified shattering where they can break from not devastated or something like that? Sure, that could be interesting. I think there's certainly ways to do this. I just don't think. I think the current one is too broad, and I think it had unintended consequences, and that's why I moved that we remove it. But there's things about 4 that I really like, and this is one of the ones that I just kind of look at and I'm like, man, this felt bad when it was revealed, and it's only gotten worse. So, and it's so, I don't know, it's so weird because it's like, how was this an intent that then allowed 3+ shooting on units and on mages? Because Alchemist Curse is a effing nightmare on 3+. Blizzard
sure is
nightmare on 3. And I mean, obviously, I play Defense 6, so Alchemist Curse is a huge nightmare on 3+. But I also play Speed 5, so Blizzard is a huge nightmare on speed. On 3+. It's like, like how was this the intended way to go about this? And so, could we adjust every unit in the game? Sure. And we probably should have after Dustin showed up with Trident Realms and was like, hey, 3+ shooting. But I think the blanket aim rule is a problem. And it either needs to be heavily modified or, at a certain point, you just cut it.
Scrap it, rebuild. That's my vote. But like I said, I don't
think we
believe that
can
will
do it
happen.
in a 4.5, but right now we can just put the steady aim rule, always aiming, and then spells don't benefit from aiming, and that will be the temporary fix until you rewrite it back to the way it was before in 4.5. But both of you didn't answer my question about the rule that you can't kill a unit unless it's devastated. You can at most waiver a unit. What do you think of that change? I think we have driven the point home about needing steady aim, not wanting 3+ shooting. So what about that one?
I think Sean did address it. I think he said that he actually likes that rule.
Okay.
I think in similar to what Sean said, I think my only dislike for it is how it interacts with shattering. I think if shattering just lowered the target's nerve value, making it to where you could effectively devastate it for temporarily and kill it with shooting, I think that would be a perfect interaction. And then this would allow for, in my mind, theoretically, at the end of 3rd, if we had all the shooting that we had for 3rd edition with just that new rule of you have to devastate it, I think that's actually a really good balance, because then it's hard to just be like, yeah, it's a true gun line because you're not killing as efficiently and as effectively. But the actual shooting profiles are balanced. So I think it was a good addition, and it's a good measure to allow for shooting to be quite effective without overtaking the meta and the game itself.
And to extend that, I like the no wavering in close combat too. I think that's interesting.
Yes, agreed. Nobody
you
likes
know.
standing there and not fighting when you're face to face.
Oh my God. And so many times,
Yeah.
and it's like, and so many times it's like, man, I'd almost rather this unit just be dead.
Yep.
I think that was a good change. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, make shattering lower the nerf by a few points for that, the equivalent of that test. But yeah, I mean, and I like how it interacts with Fearless, because Fearless was always kind of there, but it's like, well, now because nerf values kind of went up a little, like it's like, all right, well, now these units survive, they actually get there.
I would like to add some discussion to this. So it's great that wavering is not a thing in combat, but it's still a thing in shooting. And so for a player who sometimes don't meet a single shooting opponent and then comes across a list with significant shooting that wavers his or her stuff, that can be quite difficult to deal with as well. And it is a component of a game that is missing in some games yet prevalent in others. You get what I mean? Because you could meet the opponent with zero shooting, so wavering is not a thing in the game, and then you could meet the opponent with shooting, and then suddenly wavering is a thing you have to consider. And in that aspect, I don't like it that much that wavering happens in some games but not others. I'm sure it can be overcome, but there are situations where you're still used to having your chaff up front, and then now the opponent is shooting and it wavers your chaff and it blocks the way of your unit behind. I mean, it was a thing in the past, but because it doesn't happen all the time now, so it becomes if it happens, it's really a feel bad moment. Another thing is Fearless. So if wavering becomes the main thing that shooting attacks do, and then suddenly Fearless, especially if you're against an undead army and then most of it is Fearless, they don't get wavered at all. And is that too much of an extreme? Like, if the design goal is okay, most likely if you have enough shooting, you're going to waver something. But if the opponent's undead, then you're not going to waver anything, and then your shooting the effectiveness just drops by quite a lot.
No, I actually really like it because in my mind it's a little bit of a rock paper scissors where you should have a clear benefit of taking units with shooting, and I think wavering units is a large benefit in the game, having that ability to do that with ranged attacks. But on the flip side of that coin, if you're versing an army that's extremely defensive against shooting, whether it's high defense, fearless, stealthy, things like this, then your shooting feels much less effective and isn't going to accomplish, maybe the goals that it was put in the list to do. So I think it requires you to then say, well, I can't just take all shooting. I have to take other things to combat these things that my shooting will not be good into. So it forces players to play a balanced army. And I'm all for that. So I like that dynamic where I take a unit or two that is really good at fighting these types of things for whatever reason. And I could take 10 of those units, but 2 or 3 might be as many as I need to accomplish whatever goal I want as a general in that game, right? So I think that shooting is a tool, and it should be useful, but I think that people should have a way to combat it, whether it's on the table or just in the list building itself. So I think it's actually a benefit to have these things in the game.
Great. One thing to add on is that because of the waiver value being gone, it also takes 2 more damage to come to the same as 3rd edition to attempt to waiver a unit, right? Because a chaff that used to be 9-11, now it just has 11. So you need 2 more damage to come to the same probability to waiver as you did in 3rd edition. So it's also slightly harder.
I think it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah. I think if this was to be turned into a podcast audio format, it would be a smart thing to read some of these comments. So, Luke Fraser chimed in with on what our conversation is on about wavering units only unless they're devastated. So he said, I definitely like it on paper. Getting to roll a nerf test is always good, but in melee, the consequences of failure is often harsh. Shooting usually risks very little, so it seems appropriate. So I think, hang on, let me have Sean chime in. Sean, you were about to say something?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was going to comment on Luke's, comment, I guess. I think that that's always been a thing in miniature gaming is like shooting allows you to reach out and touch people turns earlier. It allows you to reach out and touch people in later turns from a further distance, things like that, while normally not being at risk yourself. And so it needs to, by default, be a lower impact thing. Otherwise, it just outshines melee. So, not being able to break things unless they're devastated, it's good, but being able to waver them and kind of keep them there, that's also, it needs to have some impact other than just putting wounds on something, which is what Fearless kind of turns it into. And that's also fine because if you can just stack up those wounds, then, it works out. But I think the problem we're seeing is that it's the benefit is outweighing the cost. And it's also, it's too consistent is kind of the issue. Is their shooting needs to be inconsistent, so that you're like, all right, well, I'm throwing out a lot of this, I'm going to get some, but I'm not necessarily going to get there all the time. Right now it's, well, I'm going to throw out a lot and I'm going to get a lot and it's going to get there 9 out of 10 times. And so the consequence of failure is very low. Whereas, like you said, the consequence of failure in melee is very high. Mm-hmm. So,
right. I have a private message from Dan Zaremski chiming in regarding shooting. He gave an idea just to avoid wholesale rules rewriting is to have a generic command that gives cover that would sort of answer some of Sean's question on it's not easy to get cover now, especially with the consequences of not having Strider, you charge out hindered. So that's an interesting idea. Definitely needs to be tested. But if we were to bring back steady aim and tweak the units profiles accordingly to have no 3+ shooting, I think to be somewhat back to where we were on the shooting power of units in 3rd edition, I think that would certainly fix things. And I'm hearing that most of the people on the panel likes the change that you can at most waver a unit unless it's devastated, right, in shooting. So that is a positive going for it in the change to 4th edition. But yeah, we want the steady aim to be a thing again, and all the shooting profiles to be tweaked around that. And Andy Patton also said a generic cover command. Oh, so there's there is some similar thoughts out there. And while we're towards the end of this shooting topic, let me just chime in on me hating ignoring cover. I really hate that rule. Now it's baked into indirect. It just takes away agency from the opponent. Come on. My simple fix, which I did a YouTube video about this a few years ago, when ignores cover turned into ignores obscured and ignores concealed, was that you can just remove the rule of ignoring cover. Right? You can have all your war engines, commodons be affected by cover, and then you just tweak their range stats accordingly. There's a few levels to push, right? The number of attacks, the shooting stat, and the blast value. And you can always tweak it to a form to reach the average that if they are not in cover, it's a little bit more painful, and if they are in cover, it's a little bit less painful. So then the opponent at least have some agency on, getting cover from commodons. Is is where I think it should be. It might be my hot take, and you can always tweak. You can even remove blast, because blast is the thing that makes the dice goes to extreme, right? So you can always have war engines have more number of attacks rather than small number of attacks with blast, like having 6 attacks instead of 2 on a cannon without blast, and then that would make things a little bit more consistent without having crazy spikes.
So I think war machines are probably one of the hardest things to balance in the game, because they are the epitome of immobile shooting. This will sit here. This will aim this way the entire game. It will not move unless it literally has no shots available, right? So it's really tough to balance that, because they are long range. At this point, some of them having ignore cover, things like that. But I really like what Sean had brought up earlier, where I think war machines should just be more specialized in the targets that they prioritize and should receive some sort of benefit. Maybe that's a Slayer or Rampage added to their range value in some way. Maybe it's extra piercing and others, things like this. I don't think we have to just focus on what's the to hit value. We can add benefits in other ways to incentivize shooting at the targets that it's intended to shoot at.
Right, and you can tweak the piercing values, right? The higher the piercing value, the better it is at taking down high armored targets. And then if it has a low piercing values, it can have more number of attacks to compensate. Yep. Luke Fraser chime in. Agree with Paige. Strongly dislike having no counterplay. Setting up to receive charges and trade in melee is so interesting. Getting shot feels bad, especially when you can't even get cover against those shots. And the only way is to be out of line of sight. And even that is not easy, given now that the unit draws line of sight from any part of its front. This is another change in fourth that makes it very hard to block line of sight.
Well, and there's other games, we talked about War Machine earlier, where cover is much easier to get. So in War Machine, it's if any part of your base, if you draw a line from any part of your base to any part of their base and it crosses cover, they get cover. Could be the smallest.
No longer
part.
requiring 50%. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that means cover is much more common. I believe MCP has a similar rule. Although then if you're close enough, you don't get cover from attacks, things like that. So there's levers and things that you can change, but kind of like what Adam's saying is setting up to receive charges and trade in melee is interesting. It's not terribly interesting to sit in wood line and try and get cover from shots, especially if then you have to charge out and be hindered. It's like, man, these shooters are getting the best of both worlds. So yeah, if we need more ways to get cover, then we need more ways to get cover. If we need to play with more terrain, then we need to play with more terrain. But that also gets kind of difficult at times, because not all armies adapt to terrain as well. I think Andy, what he was saying was a generic cover command would make the command system, which is the most imbalanced part of the game currently, even more imbalanced. It's funny because my immediate thought was, wow, that makes the command system boring. Like if the first 3 rounds of the game are me going, well, cover on this unit, cover on this unit, cover on this unit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and worse, like, man, all right, well, I need a 4+ on 2d6. How many of us have thrown that Bane chant and failed it time after time after time? And I think that's a problem.
Our game, Sean. How many commands
exactly.
did we actually succeed on in that game?
Yeah. Adam and I threw command after command, and I think we achieved half of them. And
Less than that.
it was insane. And we were both playing armies that rely on our commands. Like Rodney's is a big deal. Me having Strider is a big deal. Me having Heal is a big deal.
I would say your commands are much more impactful than mine.
Sure. But Strider's a huge part of being able to do anything with that army. And I think it's even more so under the current herd list that they just put out. And then they moved the Strider command to being a 5+. And that's, if I don't know if we're moving into that or not, but that's one of my issues with the command orders is it feels wildly inconsistent for something that's supposed to be a part of your army. Which is, I really liked the auras that were happening at the end of third. I thought the auras on BSBs, I thought how Halflings was designed, I thought how Twilightkin were designed. I thought that was also really cool. Luke said, I think Alicio loves the drama of failed rolls. And that's something I've seen kind of talked about is the drama of the game, the love of roles giving you a story, an element. That's not for me. I'm here to play a game where my decisions matter and what I'm doing has impact. And yeah, we're still playing a dice game. I still can roll less than half attacks on 3s. Less than that. Sure, that happened. I can spike nerve. I have had a game where I did 2 or 3 wounds in combat, but I rolled a hard 11s every single roll, and it was just, oh, well, guess them's the breaks. But for command orders, when it's an every turn thing, if it's supposed to be part of the army, I feel like it needs to be more consistent. And I don't love the drama of, well, really needs Strider. Oh. Okay.
That is Luke Schaefer. Less than half attacks on 3s.
I use table
my
dice.
dice too.
And obviously the table dice at Masters were
they were table dice. Some people
dice.
left them on that table. That's for sure. So
they will be left in my my dice shelf going forward. They are yellow and black to warn people not to pick them up.
There you go. Well, let's dive into commands a little bit, because I do think the command structure as it is currently is working for some armies maybe and severely lacking with others. I think commands as a whole could be a huge improvement and potentially a boon to the game if implemented well. But it just doesn't feel like they're at that point right now. So I've played Firefight, Mantic's sci-fi game, which has command orders. Have you guys both played that?
I've played, but it's been a hot minute since I touched that game.
Okay. So the command system in that game, the game itself is built around it. So your commands, each army has a list of commands that they can offer, similar to what we have with Kings at the moment. Anywhere between I think it's 4 or 5, maybe 6 commands for an army. But then depending on which warlord options you take, those warlords come with their own unique commands as well. And these commands, you roll to get a pool of dice similar to the end of 3rd edition. Don't really care for that with Kings, but the idea is that you can thank you Luke, 6 orders. But you can guarantee get off whichever command you choose based off of how much you roll in that dice pool. But the thing I really love about these commands is that you can only issue one of these commands per turn. So of the 6 faction orders that you have, so hypothetically, let's just throw nature out there.
You cannot repeat it.
You can only give 1 unit Strider then that turn. Even if you had 4 commanders, only one of them can issue Strider. So you have to choose exactly where it's most impactful, right? And I think this opens up the opportunity where commands can actually be much more impactful, much more interesting. So we can see more commands like a Green Rage, like a Strider, like some of the new Abyssal ones with Elite and Vicious. We can see much more powerful commands. And it's not going to be an imbalance necessarily once everybody has access to these lists of strong commands. I think we're obviously really far away from that, but that idea of how commands are implemented is much more appealing to me versus what we currently have right now.
Yeah, I think just to give people an idea of commands in Firefight is you roll command dice like the one we had at the end of third edition, and you generate a pool of points to spend on commands. The big difference with Firefight and Kings of War is that the commands in Firefight only cost 1 or 2 points. So even if you have a bad command roll, you can still get some of these commands off because they all just cost 1 or 2 points. So you just have to decide which is most critical. Whereas in Kings of War, the commands costed 4 to 5 points, 3 to 4 to 5 points, if I remember correctly. So there are times that you roll so poorly that you can't even get your one command off. So then it's a very few bad moment. Definitely the game was designed with the commands in mind, that you get to get off some of these commands every turn. Whereas in Kings of War, because the effects were quite strong, therefore the RC at the time have to point the commands accordingly. And then with the structure and all that, it makes it not work out. So what we have here in the implementation of 4th edition is every champion or hero just gets to roll 2 or 3d6 to issue the commands, right? And then the firstly, because we started with 2, then you can't have this implementation that you can't repeat the commands. Whereas like Luke Schaefer said, Firefight had 6. I think they started with 3, and then you could repeat the commands, and then after that they made it into 6 perfection, and you can't repeat the commands. And then certain heroes comes with their own commands as well, which certainly could have been done in King's 4th edition, but it didn't go that way. So my question, Luke Frazier said, I broadly hear people from my home region like commands for the flavor they add. Certainly the ones from Fracture are interesting. So in an ideal world where we're at the end of the 6th book and every faction got their full list of commands, and of course some of the previous factions commands have been tweaked along the way, would that be a better place for where command would be?
Well, I think I think they do all need to be balanced heavily, because obviously some factions received banger ones and some of them received we go look at Night Stalkers or EOD and go, did you get commands?
Hey, now, Night Stalker commands are much better than EOD commands, let me tell you, all right?
Sure. Yeah. No,
Pathfinder is great for the scarecrows to move up. It's decent.
Oh, man.
And it's better now, right? It's now +N+1 or something.
Yeah. The Life Leech one is kind of like, okay, it's good, but
it affects butchers now. So now it affects units without regeneration. So everything that doesn't regen can get Life Leech, which is a whole broader scope of units in Night Stalkers. But Sean, please continue.
It's a matter of balance, and I think they the balance was not good when it started. Maybe it's getting better, but at the same time, some of them I'm not sure about. Like some of the changes, I'm kind of like, okay, it's not really the direction I'd go. I do now in Firefight. Once you have the points, they just go off, right? You don't need to roll. And I think that is weirdly, I think that is a better system, because that would fix more of the consistency issue that I have with them. Because something like, Nature has Strider on 1, which is a very strong command, but you need a 5-up to get it off. That's not consistent. I would rather see, I only have X number of points. Even if I rolled low, I have X number of points. I know how many points I have to spend. I know what I can do. So from that perspective, once they're all out, if they can reach a balanced level with the commands, I think they could be interesting. But they have a bit of a ways to go with that. They're not there now. They certainly didn't start there. And to be honest, I remember in 3rd when they were putting out the command dice with the command orders initially, it was real bad. Like the balance between them was,
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
one of the orders was to give the entire Elven army plus 6-inch range, not one unit, the entire army. And I remember us going, what are you talking about? That's insanity. Meanwhile, Night Stalkers get spell ward on D3 units. And it's like, guys, I'm not sure these are really the same. So,
But let's be real. What ended up happening is every unit just got a blade of slashing whenever you wanted it. That was like, and now we're back to kind of the same thing where these dead armies that don't have a good command or a useful command to issue once you engage, it's just, oh, I guess I'm going to do a blade of slashing command on that unit. Like that's what EOD is going to be doing, right? So it just doesn't feel good. It
Right.
really is so imbalanced at this point where, in 6 months when the next book comes out, whatever armies are in that book are probably going to feel similar to how I look at Forces of Nature and Force of the Abyss right now, which is, albeit Force of Nature changed drastically from, pre-fourth, beginning of fourth to now after the book. They are probably still, in my mind, the top tier army. They are an S tier army. They have a lot of good things going for them. They have an excellent array of commands, even if some of them are, less consistent of getting off. If you get a Stampede off at the right time in the right situation, that could change a game. If you get Strider off when you need it, that can change a combat, which can change a game. A lot of other armies just don't have game-changing commands at this point. And, well, maybe they will once their book comes around, but it really, really sucks waiting 2.5 years, 3 years to get to that point. And then we can start, critiquing 4th edition or actually finding a balance. I don't know. That's just not acceptable to me.
Yeah. So just to chime in on this, yeah, let's face it, the factions that have not been expanded yet, they only have 2 commands effectively, and some of them can be very powerful. Some of them, the pair of them are pretty weak, and we will only have the full balance on the 6th book, right? But in the meantime, what about the 8 factions that's been expanded? There are what I call expanded factions so far. I think other than Halflings is in a bad spot. The rest, I think, are pretty okay. So if that's a glimpse of how things will be when all factions get their expansions, would that be a good place to be? And if they are balanced, of course. What do you think?
What do you think, Sean? Are the 8 armies out balanced? Is there discrepancies?
I think there's still discrepancies. I think they are better. See, it's funny because I think they're better than some of the unfleshed out armies, but then again, the unfleshed out armies include Ratkin and Goblins, who I think are still in a good spot. I was kind of looking through the list. I mean, Elves are technically one of those. I think Elves are in a good spot. I don't think Abyssal Dwarves have ever been in a good spot in their lives, but
I actually think Abyssal Dwarves got one of the best improvements of the armies from Fractured, at least ones that weren't one of the core ones. Their commands are actually
the choice of exploding.
Yeah, their commands are actually really good now because the Throwing Mastiffs can be put on mutant or slave units now. And you can blow up mutant or slave units, but you can choose to not have them die immediately. So therefore the command stays on them. So it's like a crystal pendant. If your opponent routes them, then it blows up and deals damage. So it's actually quite a useful set of commands between both of those.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think, give credit where credit's due. That was an improvement that army clearly needed, and I think it is a much more interesting faction because of those adjustments. But
Yeah, while we are waiting for these factions to be expanded upon, having two viable commands still makes it palatable that these factions are usable. Of course, some factions are still pretty strong, goblins being one of them, and that's also partially because of all the 3+ shooting that it gets, right?
yeah,
Ratkin, at least they were slightly nerfed, and the wretches can't get ensnare now, and the command did lose the stealthy portion of it, which certainly is a step in the right direction. I'd say whether that's enough, that's yet to be seen. But I would say that hey, doesn't mean non-expanded factions shouldn't be strong, right? They can still be strong as long as there's enough variety and viability. I think that should be the goal. While we are awaiting their book. Let's go to comments. There's been quite a lot of them, so I'll just read through them. Luke Schaefer, there are two Lukes in the chat. If you want to hear more about Firefight, tune in to Controlled Fire, your monthly musings on Mantic's Firefight. So Luke is part of the Controlled Fire Firefight podcast, right? And Luke chiming in again. Actually, the main difference with Firefight is it is alternate activations, so you can access each other's pool and have counterplay. That is very true right there. Luke Fraser this time saying, "Gosh, this Firefight game sounds pretty good." It's pretty good, but it didn't really blossom, did it? Mantic hasn't really pushed that game to
they got
widespread
their
popularity.
They got their new Epic Warpath game, which is just the large-scale battle version of Firefight. So I think that they're
does use the commands and all that.
Yeah, there are commands. I haven't played it myself, but I've heard excellent things about the Warpath game. So
yeah, so it could be a niche because Firefight being a direct competitor to the main 40k game itself, it is bound to be an uphill battle. All right. Luke Schaefer again, you can repeat the commander once if you have more than one of the same kind of commander. And commanders also use their orders in their activations. Units use faction ones on theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So with lots of cheaper commands, you can choose where to spend points even if you wrote trash. Luke saying, you mean plus life leech is better than making your search 8 into search 9. What's he talking about?
Our comparison between Night Stalkers and Empire Dust commands. I'm saying that the Empire Dust Surge command is fine. The Icy Breath one is a just straight downgrade, in my opinion, from the Frozen on shooting attacks from before. And the Frozen on shooting attacks wasn't even that great before. Whereas I think the Night Stalker commands actually have useful situations like movement up the battle line with Pathfinder, allowing you to keep an even battle line is exceptionally useful as a command. And then making certain units recover a few wounds here or there with the life leech. It's not bad. It's not anything spectacular, but it is much more usable than I would say some of the EOD commands are.
All right. Dan Zaremski, who talked about, whose comment I read earlier was the idea of a cover command theoretically should temper down the gun lines because those type of armies suddenly become inconsistent. That would be a band 8 fix, right? And like Sean mentioned earlier, it would be a very boring one. Bringing back the profiles of third edition is probably a better idea, and tempering the shooting stats. No 3+ shooting. Steady aim is back, so things that move on 4+ and shoot, move and shoot on 4+ should come back. Did somebody want to say something? Sean, you want to say something?
Yeah. So it's weird. Maybe I think the level of power of the Night Stalker commands is actually something that I'm more comfortable with than some of the other levels, like Trident Realms or like Forces of Nature or, dear God, the New Abyss commands, where I feel like the lower impact ones are kind of better for the game. And I think it also kind of compounds an issue, which is, well, if you have very good commands and you want to get them off consistently, then now you're putting more points into heroes. And list design in this game is already kind of, like in fourth, is kind of awkward. And I don't think a lot of people really enjoy the change from how list design or list building was in third. I know I've heard a lot of people complain about the battalion system. So having it be like, well, we really need to get these commands off, and these commands are really good and they really make the army function. Well, that means I need to take 3 or 4 or 5 heroes, including commanders. Well, that's a lot of points. And I don't think any of us really want to go to a hero hammer kind of day when we're playing this game. So,
but it's not even hero hammer because you're taking it just to issue the commands, right? It's just not like the heroes are fighting much.
it's a support thing. Well, I don't know. I mean, my chieftain was doing some work at this last event, but he also had 8 attacks on 3s, and
8 attacks. It's been nerfed.
Yeah, it was like, oh my god, this guy is nuts as a combat hero. And he got hit with the nerf hammer. So, but and I think that's kind of the thing too, is like, because we were talking about how halflings aren't in a great spot. They have a lot of commands, but like, are their commands making up for the army? Are their commands meant to make up for the army? And then we're not getting them off successfully, or we just don't have enough dice to get them off successfully, or, you know, things like that. It's all like this big swirling issue of like, man, our command order is good for how we're playing the game. Are they accomplishing the goal that they kind of are meant to do without warping the entire thing around them? And the problem is that, like, if they are meant to warp everything around them, then some armies got left real far behind. And if they aren't, then it's such a fine balance to walk, you know?
My opinion is that we can hit, I mean, with enough time and rounds of tweaks and updates, it is a possibility that we can have every faction have a viable list of medium-powered commands that can fit the situation. The strong ones should be toned down, the weaker ones should be toned up, and we can. I'm of the opinion that we can hit that stride at some point. Which brings me to Luke Fraser's comment. Feels like Mantic made the wrong choice in response to Command Dice backlash, but we're probably stuck with it. Yeah, we're probably stuck with this command system. I think it is still somewhat viable, playable. Whether it's great, I mean, some people think it's fun and flavorful. I'm of that thought too. Whether it's balanced is another question altogether. Whether we can achieve a acceptable sense of balance is something that I think we can, with enough updates. Right. Luke Schaefer, bro, double charge critters and something else. Stampede critters overrun into the combat. To overrun into combat again.
Get critters into 2 combats, what he's saying. That's what Stampede's all about.
Why not the hammer?
The enchanted critters.
Hey, critters are the hammer, all right?
They are vicious.
They do.
Luke Fraser, while I'm complaining, does it feel like a really bad addition to start a new project? Army constructions so restrictive, big reworks every 6 months. Even Mantic models aren't safe. I was thinking about my human Kingdoms of Men army and whether to do what orcs, and then my conclusion was like, I'll just shelve it until that book comes out, right? So I'll just work on the armies that have the books right now, which is an unfortunate situation.
I'd like to touch a little bit more on that. I do think that's one of the biggest negatives of the decisions of books every 6 months. and what we've currently seen out of the books, whether it's the initial one or the fractured books, there are significant changes within the armies. And Sean has spoken to this already before. Some units are just disappearing. Some core units are getting removed from core. Some different units are getting added to core. So it's kind of, it's one of those double-edged swords where it's like, it's nice if your armies kind of due for an update, but man, everything you had before may not be there after the update. There may be new stuff. There may be some things that are gone now. And it's really putting a lot of, unease into projects. Because even armies that weren't in the book to get updated, like Ratkin and Orcs, they're getting hit pretty hard with some of these nerfs to their commands, making their previous builds potentially unusable, making it to where you're, one or two little changes in the army, and all of a sudden your list that you were building up and the army you were printing out and painting up is all of a sudden completely different. And if that's going to happen every 6 months, when do you have time to actually build something and have a stable environment? Because I know there's some guys out there that can turn out a new army in less than a month, print it, paint it, and all that. But that's few and far between in the groups that I know. So I think that Mantic's really kind of hurting the community and the encouragement to get into projects at this point.
Yeah, you can question the viability of the 6 month release, and especially in this book format where several factions get updated at the same time. In the last week's live stream, I did mention, part of the reason was the push to re-release factions with new models. So in terms of the competitive scene and the viability and the stability of the game, it's not a great idea, but I can see why they are doing it, at least from a model production standpoint. They would like to re-release or release new models and factions periodically, and this book release is a way to generate the hype for it. So at least there's certain sense in it from the production standpoint, but of course from a game standpoint, we're not totally in favor of it. I do hope that after the 6 books get released, and I think that will be considered version 4.5 of the game, then things will be more stable in a sense that if we're still getting 6 months, because we don't know what's the plan after the 6th book, right? So are we still getting updates every 6 months, or will it be back to a Clash once per year update? Even if it's 6 monthly, there are several game systems out there that are on a 6 monthly or quarterly update cycle. Even I think Kill Team is on a quarterly update cycle. So, but at that point of time, they're just tweaking the power levels a little bit up and down. They do have, they do track tournament stats, and then factions that are winning more than 55% get a bit toned down, and factions winning less than 45% gets a bit toned up. So they're constantly balancing. So hopefully at that point of time, even if the updates are 6 monthly, there will be small tweaks that will not totally rework your army, is what I'm hoping for.
And I think, if we go back to the Clash system, or if we go to every 6 months, but they're just tweaks, that's great. We need to adjust balance. We need to address things like that. The problem is, I almost started an Order of the Green Lady army before 4th edition came out. Literally 2 weeks before 4th was supposed to hit, I was like, I could really paint some Knight Heraldry. That'd be fun. And what are the odds they get rid of Order of the Green Lady? It's such a unique army. And then now, with the fracture change into Forces of Nature, there were armies at Masters that had 3 units of Longhorns. Mm-hmm. The only heavy infantry unit in Forces of Nature now are the Grindelos, something like that. Grimbrooks.
And they're specialists.
Yeah, and they're specialists, and I don't see you taking 3 of them. I could be wrong.
Maybe possible. 2.
maybe 2.
Maybe
but
2.
3 seems a bit much.
I agree.
And that's a problem. I mean, I think, God, a part of me was like, man, I wish they'd just gotten rid of heavy infantry in 4th and just like switched to just infantry. I think it was so weird when they have a legacy bases page, but they keep including those bases in the game, and I'm like, man, I wish you'd kind of just move away from those base sizes, because it's kind of awkward if you're then going to change units and get rid of units that are using that base size, or move them into different sections of the army. So,
Been a great clean little change is if they just said infantry and had the base size, regiment infantry 100 by 80 up to 125 by 100. So
True.
you could choose any base size in between there. So the people that are playing orcs, if they don't want to, they don't have to rebase their orcs. People that are playing orcs and they want a smaller base size, okay, you can have a
Hey,
smaller
why not
base
you just
size.
remove heavy infantry altogether? Everything is 100 by 80.
Everything's just infantry then, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it feels like there were so many changes that were made specifically to streamline or to make things easier. Like, everything, the unit strength change, where unit strength is just based on size. But then they kept legacy base sizes. And I was kind of like, huh.
Well, it's more for the modeling perspective, right? It's because they didn't want people to rebase their orc armies onto infantry bases. And the boxes that are out there in the wild, they all have heavy infantry bases in the boxes, so that change
that
would
is
be
true.
difficult logistically.
Sure.
But again, that's why I was suggesting you just have infantry and you have the range that the base size can be. You just pick what you want in there.
But to address Luke's comment, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to start an army that's not either in the core book or in Fracture not core, either of the expansion books. Yeah, because what if the next army is like Forces of Nature, where it's like, oh, well, a whole bunch of this stuff changed.
Right. But at the same point, like even the armies that were in the first book, some of those got touched, like the halflings with you can't stack the brutal and whatnot, which was kind of a fun little thing they were doing. Not many people were playing halflings, it seemed, but if I was to play it, I'd probably have a couple units of edge grenadiers, and now they're not unplayable, but they're really not as crucial as they were before to the game plan.
Not quite as explosive.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a feeling, gonna call it early here, but I have a feeling that some of our Forces of Nature and Forces of the Abyss may see future nerfs too. So while you guys both those armies look excellent, and I hope they don't get touched. I hope that, they're in a great spot. I hope everybody else kind of rises up to where they are at this point. But I can, just kind of see from the pattern with the Green Rage and the Plague Pots that they're looking to bring the ceiling down as well as try to bring the floor up. So.
All right. I'll blaze through some of these comments, but before that, just want to say that Steve Foster, he has some connection issues and he has dropped out quite a while ago. He was trying to reconnect, but to no avail. So he's probably off the bed. Our nickname for him is Steve Off the Bed Foster, because he'll always be in an online chat halfway and say, okay, I'm off the bed. He sleeps pretty early. So let's look at the rest of the comments. There's a huge bunch from Luke Schaefer. Responding to Abyssal Dwarfs, AD are dope. Slaves can throw dogs now, and all slave list is hilariously viable. His comments on EOD, I think shooty EOD backed up by wind blasting EGs are great. EGs are enslaved guardians.
Slave guardians.
I'll
disagree with you, Luke.
Swarms.
I don't think anybody wants to play Empire Dust, especially not that way.
Stampede is stupid good, but I have no problem with the Strider command in nature. They used to be, I don't really care about terrain. And it lets them be that, but not entirely consistently. I'll just talk about this a little bit. I think when they made Strider the only thing that can ignore the hindered penalty in combat, they didn't rethink some of the Pathfinder units that they are meant to have Pathfinder to charge into combat, so they should gain Strider from this change, but they did not. So a lot of these units stayed with just having Pathfinder, which is now just relegated to a movement tool. So a lot of the Pathfinder units, which were designed or meant to be charging into combat, should have gained Strider, or should have swapped Pathfinders for Strider, or should have just have both Pathfinder and Strider. With the Strider command being a little bit harder, maybe some of the nature units being, with their shtick being charging unhindered, maybe some of the units should have a Strider inbuilt. Strider being 5+, I'd like to segue into what I think about command orders. I think that the game has become simpler to play, right? Because when you double charge a unit, you no longer block each other. You can withdraw units now. If the shitty unit is stuck in combat, you can always withdraw them, conveyor belt them behind your hammers, and your hammers can double charge. The game has become easier to play, which I welcome, because I think that a good Kings of War player shouldn't just be one that's good at geometry. It's like, oh, I can double charge because I know how to place my units. I know how to space out my second line. I mean, that's a good skill to have, but then it shouldn't be the differentiating factor. It should be, in my opinion, strategic decisions on the battlefield rather than geometrical ones. And commands, I mean, 2d6 on a 4+ is still 75%. And I do welcome commands being 2d6 or 3d6 on a 4+ or 5+. So it makes some of the tactical play around what if I don't get the command off? What's my counterplay? Because you used to have to plan for, what if my unit gets wavered in combat? So now the what do you call it? The instability there, the random factor there is on not getting off the commands, which I can accept. 75% still theoretically goes off quite often. Even 2d6 on 5+ is, I think, just shy of 50%. So you can still fish for a 5+ on a 2d6 command dice. And if you have two commanders in range, you could fish for it over 4 dice, which is somewhat consistent. And I do welcome the 2d6 and 3d6 in trade-off of the game being easier to play. There's no wondering what do you do if my unit is wavered? What do I do if I block myself? What do I do if the opponent blocks me? There's less counterplay in that. So there's a bit more strategy in, what do I do if I can't get the command off, or I really need to get this command off? So let me put all 3 commanders there and I can roll one by one until I get it off. I'll go to you guys, but just let me finish up the comments first. Luke say I can do an army in 2 weeks. So Adam replied that your god models are struggling. And last comment so far is regarding Trident Realms for Luke Fraser. Feels like frogs need a heavy rework. Such nice Mantic plastics, but alas, I don't like how the frog infantry looks. They look kind of naked. I feel that there could have been more details, textures on their skin. Some bumps would really help, but right now they are really smooth and naked looking. And then they have, I think, very minimal accessories in the clothing and loincloth and all that. The big toads look fine though. But anyone like to chime in on the things that have been discussed previously, or about what I said as well?
I mean, I agree with you I appreciate I appreciate like the double charge change where it's more about strategy and less about geometry. I think that's a good statement. I like that. And I like withdraw as a order. I think that's kind of neat to be able to like move your unit back through. And then bring your hammers up or something like that. I do think that's interesting. I think that's I think Ratkin and Goblins make that a balance issue, but I think as a core rule, it is very interesting and I like it. So yeah, I largely agree with what you were saying there.
What are your guys' feelings about the multiple pivots, the extra pivot essentially that everybody got, unless you're shambling? I've heard a mixed bag on this one, and I've kind of grown indecisive in my own experience. So, Sean, what are your takes on it?
I don't love it, to be honest. I think it's very forgiving, especially if you're just doing a normal move, and so you get the double pivot. I think that's extremely forgiving and means that planning ahead is less of an element in the game. I really don't love marching and then pivoting. I think it was interesting as an order or as a thing for dwarves. I think that was really cool. And I think it gave them a distinct play style, but they were also doing it at 8 inches. It's a little bit different when you're like, I'm going to go 16 inches and turn sideways.
Or the dreaded 20 and turn.
Sure. Yeah. And ironically, like I really, I mean, this is a personal thing, but I really hate air elementals losing nimble, because that always felt nice to be able to go 10 and double turn. But that was, again, going 10 is one thing. Going 16 or 18 is quite another. With terrain kind of getting in the way, sometimes it's okay because that can block you up. But yeah, I feel like it's extremely forgiving in terms of just normal moving units around. So I love it.
I have no sympathy for your what you said about air elementals. They are in a good spot right now. For me, surprisingly, I think it's a net positive in my opinion. Sure, we lost a lot of strategy. Things has become much easier. Forward planning is less of an issue now. But I always welcome things that, number one, makes it easier for beginners to play. Because how many times a beginner lost because they deployed wrongly, they moved the first couple of turns wrongly, and then the game is lost already. So that is less of an issue. So I always welcome things that makes it easier for a beginner to learn or pick up the game or play effectively at the game. Number two, makes the game play faster, because used to be when you have one pivot, right? From my unit being here, I wanted to be up 5 inches and facing this particular angle. You really have to wiggle it and just to slide it and show your opponent that you're moving it correctly. Yes, the unit can be at this spot and facing this direction. And right now, it's not an issue anymore. I just pick up and place, right? As long as I'm moving my move value, there is a lot of angles that I can be, so it's no longer there's less arguments on the table regarding this, because there used to be this problem, for you to be standing here moving up 5 inches and still have my this unit in the front arc, you have to pivot, and then sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. So sometimes you have this argument with an opponent, especially if they're sloppy players. And then so that problem is less of a problem now, which I also welcome. I do acknowledge that there is a loss in strategy or loss in differentiation between better players, but there is a trade-off I'm okay with, as long as there are other strategies brought back into the game, like for example, withdraw is a new thing that's in the game. Command orders, which I mentioned earlier, you have to plan for getting off the command orders, or placing multiple heroes to get off an important command orders. If the first one fails, you try with the next one, or just playing around. What if you fail the command order? Surprisingly, that dreaded 20-inch and turn, because the defending player can pivot twice now, it's also easier to receive that. Whereas used to be when you move a dragon or monster 20 inches up, beast of nature, and turn, and then the opponent is in a bad position, and then with one pivot, they have a lot of issue wiggling their army to counterplay against that. But now it's much easier to, he gets his 20-inch and turn, but you get your double pivot to respond to that. So I think it's a good trade-off. So generally, I think it's a net positive for the game.
I agree with a lot of things you said, Paige, as far as the kind of the benefits that come with it. I kind of equate it to what we were discussing with the aiming and shooting, where I think just a blanket rule for it doesn't feel very good. I like a little bit more intricacy. I like the idea of some units having a more disciplined movement and having the ability to do 2 pivots at once or move at the double and pivot. So I like the idea of it not being just the base that everybody gets it, but it being a benefit for taking a more expensive unit, or a some of the, maybe even some of those kind of medium type units that they're not expendable and super cheap, but they are still not the elite of the elites. I think it would be a good way to potentially add value to some of those middle of the road type units in that way. But I think the units that should absolutely not be having it are the knights, the cavalry units that are speed 8 or speed 9 and flying up a flank. It just and the Drakons, the Elohi, those types of units, it just feels like, this was an issue in 2nd edition, and you are right, there is better defense against it with the maneuvering, but taking that particular board space and having that much threat just feels like it really hinders a slower army quite a bit in what they can or can't do and how they can approach armies. So, and I think one of the things that was really kind of pushed with this edition was with the core units and everything is Mantic wants people to play infantry. They want these armies to feel more like armies. And so I think that giving those fast units a huge upgrade with that kind of decentivizes people from taking the speed 5 infantry that just kind of walk across the field and get outflanked. So,
well, in that vein, Mantic is also forcing us to take infantry because of the core specialist support battalion structure, right? So, maybe a perfect solution would be that all the slow units get essentially 3rd edition nimble, right? They get pivot twice if they are speed 5, 4, 5, 6 units, and speed 7 and above, they don't have the old 3rd edition nimble.
I wouldn't mind it, except for the super cheap units. I think expendable units, it should be kind of argued that they're just not well trained. The rabbles, the wretches, why would they know how to move in a column, in a line? I think those units should not get the benefit personally. But
so it's funny because Adam, you mentioned the shooting thing, and Paige, you were talking earlier about how steady aim was so prominent towards the end of 3rd. And in a way, to me, that feels like what we're talking about here is, except with nimble. Like, nimble shouldn't have been a blanket rule, which is what it became. It just should have been more prevalent. And so we should have seen more infantry with nimble. We should have seen more, well-trained units using nimble, but not the Speed 8, Speed 9 Cav, not the expendable wretches. Which, by the way, can we please bring back expendable? Because I think expendable was a great rule.
Would love it.
And like, wretches should not be unit strength 4. You know, zombies should not be unit strength 4. Like, expendable was a great rule. There's a reason we had it in 3rd. It was wonderful. It did everything it needed to do. Simply, cleanly, impactful for the game while not being horrendous. You know, and then the scenarios where you didn't use unit strength, it's like, oh, who cares? But yeah, I mean, I think
You mean expendable was
Oh, I'm getting some lag
meant
from
to reduce
Paige.
the unit strength?
yeah, you cut out a little bit there, but I think what you were saying is expendable is to reduce unit strength. Yes, I think it's a very good rule when it goes, all right, we slap it on zombie hordes. Now they're only unit strength 3 or 2. You know, we slap it on wretches. You no longer get unit strength 4 for 105 points in core for some reason. I think expendable was a great keyword, and I think it is one of those things that we should have brought forward from 3rd. But yeah, I mean, just to bring it back to movement, I think what both of you are kind of saying there is I think nimble would have been great as a more prevalent rule, but not as a blanket rule. Just like steady aim would have been great as a more prevalent rule, but not as a blanket aim rule.
Agreed. And it kind of goes back to, in my mind, what we've been discussing this whole time is I think we all like the idea of certain units having certain roles and benefiting from playing those roles. And I think we could do that with movement and with unit types as well as the role of shooting and melee and all these things too. And that's what I think makes a really great dynamic game. And I think it's part of what the expectation was from a player perspective when 4th was coming out. Because I think at the end of 3rd edition, we really did have a lot of those core things established within armies, within units within those armies. And while we saw, certain types of rules and certain types of units more prevalently, I think the idea was, well, we don't want to just lose all that. We want to make the units that are less prevalent more beneficial in some way, make them more impactful to the game, make them more, have more effects that would expand the game versus I think what we kind of got, which is let's hit a reset button. Let's just start over in a lot of these different areas. And we'll see if this new system that we're building up from will work out. And I think we're seeing the downside of a lot of that right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of been some of my take too. Is like, and I mentioned it, like, we went back to conditional inspiring. No one liked that. No one wanted that. Why did we go back to conditional inspiring? We amped up hindering to be just hellish again. And Paige, you mentioned, with enough changes, like we do get back to a good state. And that's kind of what we saw in 3rd. Hindering got toned down, and it was good. It was a good change. Like
PC only -1. Yeah.
Why are we getting rid of that? Like we got rid of conditional inspiring. I think that needs to stay away because there's so many times we've, locally we've looked at list building and we're like, hey, I'd love to throw this unit in, but it only inspires moonlight units on Thursdays. And it's like, well, I don't, we play on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and all the commanders, all the characters, they're much more expensive now because they're paying for commands and some hidden costs and hidden formula. And well, if you're paying for a commander that doesn't inspire, then you're doing it wrong. Like in my mind, all of these commanders should inspire in some way. You should just be paying for it.
The Green Lady is 280 points.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
She's pointed like she's a dragon.
Yeah,
and
I think it's the most expensive individual in the game.
Oh my god! I mean, I I want
And
to play a dragon. I don't want to
And
play.
of course, well, what you do is you take Host Shadow Beast on her, and then she is a dragon.
Oh,
Okay.
sure. Is she yielding? I don't know if she's yielding or
I
not.
don't think she is yielding. No, she has
She's
5
not yielding.
attacks for some
She's
reason
definitely
now
not
because
yielding.
they thought, yeah, let's make her a battle mage for whatever reason. And I think it'd be kind of cool if she had the ability to cast her spells while she's engaged in combat, and then maybe you can justify 250 points or something for this type of character. But when she has a really effective heal and everything, and she's more of a support character, why is she that expensive for what a druid does basically in the end? So
Yeah. Oh boy. Let's talk about another thing that Sean was talking about in his Facebook post, which was about yielding. So that combo of yielding units being able to decide that when it is in combat and when it isn't combat, allowing units to show that things engage with yielding, and then the yielding still gets to fight in combat is quite a weird interaction for sure. Broken at times, and definitely shouldn't be there. I think when yielding was introduced, the implications of it hasn't been thought out fully. And then when the earlier questions on yielding was being asked, and then it was officially answered by Mantic that you can ignore it when you want to, then it creates a lot of weird situations, and definitely that can be toned down or adjusted. Yeah, so one of the suggestions I had was that yielding just meant that if you're engaged with a yielding unit, you can choose to ignore it, or when you charge, you can move through them. If you're engaged, you can still issue any movement command that you want as if you're not engaged with them. But if you choose to stay engaged with them, then you're considered engaged. That means things can't shoot at you. So that would probably help quite a bit. We have a private message from Dan Zaremski to me earlier. He said his suggestion for the fix is to get rid of Host Shadow Beast and make all the cheap wizards and flag guys 0 attacks, so then they can't charge. So no need to rewrite yielding. That is one fix for it.
I think
definitely it can be adjusted to a state that is acceptable.
I think
Sure.
a real easy fix would just be yielding. You can ignore the character during the movement phase. So, during the combat phase, no. During the shooting phase, no. I think that fixes the issues we have with it. To kind of, yes, the Host Shadow Beast thing is a problem, but even the one wound that a normal yielding character can do can be an issue. You're just less likely to get it off. I think the real issue that comes in with it is that you can have a yielding model charge a unit, shoot that unit in the shooting phase because you ignore the yielding model, do 12 wounds to that unit. Let's just, random number. Let's say they're Nerve 17. Let's say they're Palace Guard, a regiment of Palace Guard. Okay. Now you go to the combat phase, you do 1 wound. That unit's not devastated, but it can still break because now we're no longer in the shooting phase. But realistically, it's breaking to shooting wounds. It's just that 1 wound from that melee yielding individual now counts as 1 plus 2d6 in terms of wounds done to devastate that unit and break them. And so it's so much higher of an impact than it's meant to be. And it bypasses a lot of the shooting protections that Alicia wanted to write into the game. And then, of course, Shadow Beast just makes it consistent in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I think it's a real simple fix to just say, well, okay, you can't ignore the yielding individual for shooting because you're not going to shoot at your buddy, right? So, but yeah, it's a poor interaction, and it's a really poor interaction that they wrote that FAQ the way they did.
I agree. I don't like it. But I will take this moment to point out a very unique interaction that also adds complexity to that example. So you do your 12 wounds to the 17 nerve, you roll your 5 twice. That unit is now wavered. You go to combat, you do 1 wound in combat, or you do no wounds in combat. Well, let's do 1 wound, and then you have to roll a new nerve test. But you don't break the unit. It was preemptively ruled for Masters that that unit would still remain wavered because it was wavered from the shooting nerve test, even though in my mind I argued that the most recent nerve test was a steady because you took 1 from combat, right? This was not, any official answer from Mantic. It's not in an FAQ anywhere, but it adds complexity to the game where there really doesn't need to be complexity in the game, right? So I don't know what the right answer is. I'm sure if it happens, your TO is going to have a fun time trying to, piece apart a bunch of different rules to come up with their answer. But I don't like that that's even possible at this point.
So you get to roll a nerve test in the shooting phase because essentially it's not, you ignore it being engaged, right? So
exactly,
you get to
yep.
roll.
So you can get the
And then
benefit
you
of
roll
yielding, and then you can potentially get the benefit of routing after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all because that 1 combat wound, it's effectively, the unit is still dying to shooting. Like you're doing the majority of the work in the shooting phase. It's just because there's suddenly a phase state change. Oh, well, he gets to do a better nerve test roll. Better in that this can break by going over as opposed to just wavering. And it really sucks for Fearless because I had it happen to Earth Elementals where it was like, cool, this Earth Elemental regiment that was undamaged at the start of the turn took so many wounds in shooting. Cool, we're fine. They're fearless. Everything's good. Did 1 wound. Well, now that 1 wound only needs to roll a 3 or a 4 to break them. And it's like, well, that's... Now I'm not... where's my value for fearless anymore? Where's my value for having high nerve? It's just... Yeah, units may only ignore friendly yielding units in their movement phase is, I think, the solution.
I think we agree.
I would just remove friendly from that. I think that there is a clear purpose. I don't want army standard bearers to become chaff pieces.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And things like that. So I agree with the wording except for just remove friendly. So units may ignore yielding units in their movement phase.
In the movement phase, yep.
That's one fix. I'd like to talk about Adam Ballard's scenario on the unit being wavered in ranged and then steady in combat. Wavering is based on the rules written so far. Wavering is a status, so he gets a wavering status in the range phase. In the combat phase, it's a steady result, but a steady result doesn't wipe out a wavering status.
Okay.
So based on the rules so far, but we all agree that all this needs to be cleaned up. I would.
The complex.
One other
issue.
With these yielding units is that you could double charge the enemy with a normal unit and a yielding hero, and then in his return volley of attacks, he didn't have enough attacks to kill off the yielding hero. And then, based on the rules now, if he's only engaged with a yielding guy at the end of the combat, he can reform. But if based on your fix, the yielding hero would still prevent it from reforming. You get what I mean? And it is a viable strategy if the yielding unit can prevent a unit from reforming, because even the 11 nerf flag bearer, the yielding the enemy needs to devote quite a number of attacks to bring it to even 5 wounds, kill it on a 6. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Luke was talking a little bit about it. So
looks
while
like
you guys
Luke was
ponder on
already
that.
putting some stuff out there. So
So
I think yielding has some other issues. So having played elves, I had a situation where I charged a yielding individual, and I still with a horde of archers, and I still shot that same turn because it's a yielding individual. I ignored it and I decided to shoot. There is no restriction for shooting when you've issued a charge order, only when you've issued an at the double order.
Oh.
So I was able to shoot. I shot at a giant that was sitting behind this yielding individual. I then went to combat, killed the yielding individual, overran into the giant, fought that giant in combat then, and ended up killing the giant as well. All these things were heavily wounded already. But that archer horde being able to shoot and do 2 combats effectively did 3 turns worth of attacks, all because this yielding rule is what it is, and I think it's just
it's
really
glorious.
bad choice.
Yeah,
it's glorious.
Yeah, and it's such a it's an easy fix. Just can't ignore in the shooting and combat phase. Like, just only ignore in the movement phase. All right, well, guess we solved some of those problems right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you add on the suggestion that if you're only engaged with a yielding individual at the end of combat, you can reform. Maybe it can be more elegantly implemented, but with that
I think there needs to be some change to like post-combat things anyway. Like, I don't love if my unit gets hit in the front and gets hit in the side. If I kill the unit in front of me, I just have to stay with them in my flank. Like, it feels, I don't know. I think things like that are kind of awkward because you can only reform in the movement phase. So it's like,
it's semi-awkward, but the way that our locals play is that since that's the rule, we always prioritize killing the unit in the flank.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that's another major complaint that I've heard as far as rules go. Not that it's
do you think it's egregious though, Adam?
Or I don't think it's on the same level as a lot of the other things that we've discussed this evening. But that's like a quality of life change that's like, I think a lot of people would like to see that updated, but it's not a make or break. It's not a game changer. It is very situational, right?
Yeah. It is an extra paragraph of text, though. Like, if you're only engaged with one unit at the end of your combat, you may choose to turn and face that unit and center yourself on that. Yeah. And then if you're, if you're engaged with 2 units on one flank at the end of combat, you can reform, and then it must be centralized and blah 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 against the 2. So it's a lot of text to explain that interaction. No.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it being the way it is currently. It's just you have to strategize. If you got hit in the flank, then you jolly well have to kill that flanking unit, or you get flanked again. Yeah.
If we have a list of things I'd like addressed, that's going closer to the bottom than
Agreed.
It's just very different from what it was before. Just that. Oh well. Okay. So, let's go to the comments. Luke Schaefer with a bunch of comments. One thing he was talking about earlier that we said the text was to take infantry, but it's not applicable to Trident Realm, Salamanders, Undead, and Ogres. Undead, Zombie Trolls are in core. So what about Salamanders? What's in core for Salamanders? The Fire Elemental? Only if you take a certain warlock for Salamanders.
Trident Realms are Depth Horrors.
Depth Horrors.
Yeah. Ogres are obviously everything.
Yeah, but ogres are kind of they've always been kind of their own thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Luke said, I know, it
is kind of weird because Trident Realms used to have pretty good infantry. I mean, that's what Luke won Masters with, was the Berserker.
The Thule.
The Thule, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
they
hate
had
the
a
name
great
of that unit
formation.
because it sounds like number 2. You have to emphasize the H, the just to make sure people get 2
Yeah.
regiments. You mean 2 regiments? I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Thule are one of those units that are just non-existent. Like the Trident Realms list, I think in general is a pretty well balanced one, but Thule are probably the one unit you just don't see anymore at all. So
Yeah. Minor balance fixes could fix that for sure. All right. So Luke said that Undead doesn't need infantry, but Zombie Horde is great. Basically,
yeah,
Luke, I raised this issue with yielding characters and shooting in the core playtest group in January. Yeah, I think they're well aware of all the weird interactions after the official what do you call it? The official
feedback
reply from
survey
Mantic.
form, whatever that is.
So
No, remember they had a stream with Matt Gilbert
Oh,
and
yeah,
Alicia
yeah.
to address all the initial questions, and so that was the direction they went with yielding.
Yeah, it was
I
interesting.
think they're aware of a lot of issues because I know they've been brought up by other people, both in official and unofficial channels. And that's kind of, I mean, to be honest, that's kind of why I made the post I did, is because I'm like, hey, I don't think you're listening in private. And, you know, I mean, Ronnie went to, was it Lone Wolf?
Yep.
You know, and saw these things. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Where are we here? And this is gonna sound weird, but bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
I think the public feedback document is a good idea. However, I don't necessarily think it addresses what you need it to address. And it suffers from, in statistical analysis, we call this self-selection, wherein the people who choose to address the issue or who choose to do the survey are self-selected. And it doesn't mean that they have any criteria other than they chose to do it. And I think some of the issues that are coming up, we don't need to be listening to everyone's comments on them, because not everyone is interested in balancing the game in a certain way. You need to be listening to people who have experience playing it, who have experience going to events, who have experience seeing various different things. Because, you know, local metas change. Not everyone's interested in throwing out 28 units on the table. And so you might not ever see that as an issue. So while the public feedback survey is great in some regards, it doesn't answer all questions. And so if that's the only way you're getting feedback, that's not going to solve or bring to your eyes the issues that are there. And that sounds weird because I don't want to disenfranchise people, obviously. But there you go.
I think it's heartening to know that that's probably not the only form of feedback they're receiving. It's one of the avenues. The feedback form will be a good gauge to sense where the general public is on the issues, and of course, it's limited to those who want to do the feedback. Like you said, Ronnie went down to Lone Wolf to see the issues himself. And here at Masters, we have Karl Przelinsky, who is gathering feedback on behalf of Mantic, right? So,
and I gave him plenty.
Hopefully, yeah. And I'm happy to hear that off of Countercharge podcast. And definitely the vast majority of the Mantic team will be at Clash of Kings UK, which will definitely be another big source of feedback, because a lot of the European players from the various countries go to Clash of Kings UK, and those that travel to UK from the European countries, they are all the hardcore tournament players, and there is a valuable source of feedback. And I hope that they take the feedback and continue to improve on Kings of War to a state that it'll be great again. I would say. There are some improvements, but yeah, there are a lot of issues with fourth, which is not what any of us had hoped for.
So I'd like to ask a question because I have my own thoughts on it. But at this point, with what we've seen with the release of fourth, we have our first book now. Obviously, we have a lot of things that we're critiquing and we would like to see changed. Do you guys think, or do you guys trust that Mantic will appropriately make changes that players are looking for? I mean, like the ones we discussed tonight. Do you trust Mantic to make the appropriate accommodations in the next book coming out at the end of the year?
I have faith that steady aim can be brought back. Whether in the book at the end of the year or the book after that. Hopefully the book at the end of the year. I have faith that whatever problems we have with using characters can be addressed with further tweaks. Steady aim is an easy implementation. What about the units that can go to 3+? That will be another question. Will the units get tweaked? What about magic missiles? You could easily implement that they can't get aiming bonus. Magic missiles. So those can be done. And if the public sentiment is strong enough that this should be implemented, I think we will see it happen. Seeing the response to Sean's post on Fanatics is a good indication that these are the things that people want. I don't know who are in the core playtest group except one person, so I don't know how many of them there are. How many of them are discussing these issues? I hope that this core playtest group will be able to make these changes like how the RC are able to in the past. And hopefully the team will continue to grow. If there's not enough members in this group to address all these issues, then the team should continue to grow, recruit more members into the team to discuss these matters. And then these things could be addressed. Command orders, I see the only way to fix them is to continue to balance the command orders, continue to balance the overpowered ones, bring up the weak ones. When every faction have their 4 or 5 and are relatively balanced, I think that will be in a good spot. So I think we will get there eventually, but I just hope sooner rather than later. Because as of now, I think the competition, the threat from other game systems is very real. War Machine, MCP, whatever it is, and the longer it takes to address these issues, the harder, the more we will lose players to these systems, or it'll be harder to attract new ones. I think for new players who come into this game, they do not get the full extent of the issues that we're facing. So I think the game is still viable for a very brand new player to Kings of War. But it's the veterans, the people who play a long time like us, who see these problems also because we have been playing the game so much and so long. So if they don't get addressed, the newer player that plays enough games will start to see these problems as they play more games. So it would be a good idea to really take this feedback from the veteran players because, like Sean mentioned, a balanced game system is beneficial for both tournament and casual players. The casual player doesn't want to get stomped as well. Feel like he never had a chance to begin with. so that's important. So that's my feel of it. What about you, Sean?
So I'm gonna faith, no. I think what is more likely to happen is they're going to do incremental changes when they need to do larger ones. And I think we'll see some changes to aim. I think we will see maybe a change where you can't go below 4. Maybe we'll see some units adjusted. I think they'll band-aid it the same way they did with the Trident Realms. I think we'll see something with yielding change that might fix it, might not. It'll depend on what they choose to do, but I think they'll address it. I think, like Paige is saying, we're going to see command orders continue. I think they're going to continually adjust it, and they might get it to a good spot. They definitely are addressing that. There are some other things that I'm not sure they're going to change because I'm not sure it's on their radar. I don't think conditional inspiring is going to change based on what they just did in Fracture, which is sad, but it is, their choice. I don't see them changing the battalion system in any meaningful way, which I think is going to impact list diversity. We had very low list diversity, and I don't think that was good, and I don't think they're going to address it in a meaningful way. I think next Masters, you're going to see the same thing as this Masters, where you're going to see 6 people playing the army. Most of the lists are very similar, with a few things here and there. I don't think we're ever going to go back to Seattle Masters, where 6 people had Twilight Kin, and only one model was consistent between all 6 armies, which was the Summoner Grove. So I think they will address some of it. I don't think they'll address it enough. And then I think we'll see what the community feels like after that book is released. Because if those changes aren't really hitting home, I think then you're going to start seeing some communities have problems holding players. And I think you're going to see some events not having people show up. And then it'll be put up or shut up kind of time where they'll have to do something. Because right now they still have some Grassi,
I feel like the book at the end of the year is the make or break. And I am kind of with you, Sean. I don't have faith that they'll make the appropriate changes necessary. I think they will do some half measures here or there, but I feel like the game is at a point where it almost needs a 4.5 by the end of the year in order to really have the reverse momentum to go back the other way that's needed at this point. And I think it does revolve around a lot of the things we discuss. And I think, the battalion building system is a core part of that. And if they don't address that in any way, that's really going to be a make or break for a lot of people. I think that if we don't see, appropriate core rules that are obviously had been tested throughout third and implemented, if we don't see some of those just re-added to the game, whether it's the, hindered charge, whether it's, thunderous charge off a hill, or even the shooting that we've discussed through and through here, I think that you're going to see people also begin to just lose faith at that point. And I think that's when it's really, the game is really in trouble. I think right now, a lot of people that are upset or have complaints are really in a genuine position of, we want this to turn around. We want these things to change and be better. And if you give the whole year after the edition's been out and you don't address the things that are crucial to some of these players, then I think they are going to give up on you as a company, and they don't have the faith that those changes will ever be coming. So you can only kind of do minor changes and Band-Aids for so long until you need to just tear it down and rebuild it in a lot of ways. So I hope that they do major changes and they're really looking at big impacts for the end of the year book for a lot of players' sakes.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think Luke Frazier brought up a point earlier where is it a good time to build an army? And it's weird because, a lot of us held off on building armies when Fourth was announced because we didn't want to start something new. And now we're in the same pattern where it's like, well, let's see what happens at the end of the year, but I don't want to start an army right now. And that's a problem for a miniatures company, It's a problem for a game system where, well, I guess I'm going to sit on my old army for another few months. I'm not going to make any changes. I'm not going to innovate. I'm not going to make new lists. I'm not going to be excited because I'm waiting for changes to drop. And it's funny because MCP is doing that right now. They announced a big thing at Adepticon, and then they announced, well, it's going to be pushed back a month. And then they announced, well, it's going to be pushed back a month. And it's like, well, if you're announcing big changes, people aren't going to be doing things. They're not going to be starting new factions. They're not going to be starting, picking up new things. So every time you delay, we're just taking more time. And it's just slowly, and it's like, well, hey, you want to play a game of that? Well, it's just going to be the same thing we played 2 weeks ago, right? Because nothing's changed. We haven't gotten anything new. And that's not to say that, you don't play the same thing, you don't practice and things like that. But there does come a point where it's like, man, if we're all sitting here waiting and we're not starting new factions and we're not starting new armies and we're not building new units and we're not playing with changes to different things, oof, that's rough.
Then what are we doing, right? So
talking in dark rooms.
That's true.
The road to arrogance. So let me just go through some of these comments from Luke. This is responding to Adam doing that glorious charging archers into yielding individual, shooting a giant, and then overrunning and killing giant. To be completely honest, he deserved that for letting you charge this yielding individual. So Luke Shaver also said, I was complaining about that during the weekend. Should be able to reform to face if only engaged on one flank. Salamanders take craft. I think that's the guy that gives you core fire elementals. Thanks, guys. All right, so let's end off with talking about battalions. So I think they did the smallest of band 8 fixes in Fracture, which is having champions being able to move one unit from support to specialist or from specialist to core. It is a band 8 fix, but the smallest one of all. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt that Fracture is still just 6 months or 7 months after the edition was released, so there's still a lot of uncertainties in the air. So which is why we are pinning a lot of hopes on Arrogance being able to fix, which is the book at the end of the year, being able to fix a lot of the issues that we still see. One of it is the battalion structure. I think one of the issues with the battalion structure. Before that, let's talk about the 3rd edition list building structure. Some people have no problems with it, but there are some people who are so confused about it because, like, heavy infantry and large infantry hordes unlock three things, while the large infantry hordes unlocks 3 things, which is 1 hero, 1 war engine, and 1 monster. Whereas hordes unlocks 2, right? And it's 1 hero and 1 war engine / monster. Or it could be 2 titans, if 1 monster and 1 titan, which is hell of a confusing. So definitely list building needed a cleanup. At the end of the 3rd edition, a lot of things unlocked. If you remember, a lot of shooting units were irregular. A lot of flying units were irregular, but over the course of the edition, they became regular. It made list building very easy, and I'm not sure if in retrospect I like that, because I remember building an Order of the Green Lady back when 3rd edition was just released. So Order of the Forsaken were irregular. Naiad Heart Piercers were irregular. So it was quite difficult to build a list. I had to bring a horde of men-at-arms and a horde of water elementals, which became earth elementals down the line. So that gave me 2 heroes and 2 monsters. And I brought a Brotherhood Regiment, which is a regiment unlock. So that gave me 3 monsters and 2 heroes. I brought 2 heroes only, Green Lady and a Druid. And 3 monsters, 2 Beasts of Nature and 1 Pegasus. Because I can't fit in a second Pegasus. And I still have 3 sources of inspiring because all of the redemption are inspiring but irregular. So it was quite a weird trying to fit a list together. But then towards the end of the edition, like it's so easy. It felt as if there was not really much restrictions at all. And of course, coming into 4th edition with this battalion structure, everything became so difficult now. So even if running my Green Lady list as Kingdoms of Men, I only have essentially 1 regiment or 1 horde of infantry, right? Or 2 regiments. So I can't build a legal list with these new restrictions. There is a general direction of bringing, more troops, more infantry into the game. But because of this core structure, right, everything revolved around core. You need a core to unlock a specialist, right? And then with a combination of 2 core/specialists, you can unlock the support and the heroes. And also, 1 core unlocks 1 auxiliary. I tried to build a Abyss list earlier last week. I tried to fit 2 gargoyles and 2 imps. Then I realized I only have 3 cores, so I can't fit 4 auxiliaries in. So everything revolves around core. The core is a basic building block, right? And then there's this, the first of the issue is this huge disparity of quality of core units, right? That's the first major imbalance factor. And notwithstanding all the people who felt that they can't build legal lists anymore because they just don't have the core units. So I think that is generally the issue with the battalion structure. Of course, there's another problem with the 2nd battalion requiring 6 cores. So then that puts even more emphasis on the quality of your core units. Whether it's good enough to bring 6 off or cheap enough to bring 6 off in the case of goblins. Yeah. So there's so much emphasis on the core units, which is one of the big issue. Anyone would like to add on the current issues with the battalion system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it limits list diversity. I also think it impacts different factions in different ways. Obviously, goblins and Ratkin have no issue plopping down several core units for nothing. Whereas, like, other things, I think going to where some troops are unlocking was a good move in that regard. I mean, I ran 4 Earth Elemental troops as unlocking, and that was great for me. It kind of opened that up while giving me strong chaff. But some factions don't have that, and I think that's a problem where goblins are just like, 85 points. Here you go, core. And you're right. There's some that don't want to take it.
80 points, I think.
Is it 80 points? Oh my god. Every time I talk about goblins, it just gets worse. I'm starting to think it's just me. I think it's every time I talk about it, it retroactively actually does get worse.
80.
And I'm making them, better. But I also, I feel like it did cut out some of the more interesting builds. You can't take an all Alohi Basileia list anymore. And I don't think that was a tournament breaking build. I don't think that was stomping the meta. It was fun. It was interesting. You can't take it anymore. So do I love it? No. I think it's another one of those things that Alicio built in other game systems and decided to bring over and was like, hey, this is fun in other games. It should be fun here. And then we went, what is it? And he went, yeah. And then didn't follow up. And a part of that too is I think him designing the battalion system, but then not being part of the list design, means that you have two separate things that are not synergizing in probably the most important part of the game.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, Sean. I think that's the core of the issues that we're experiencing at this point. I think the battalion system could be great if it was implemented properly, if there was a thorough understanding of each individual army, what that army needed to be successful, and kind of guiding armies in certain ways based off the theme of the list. And that usually revolves around having warlords that encourage or benefit certain units, whether it's through auras, through unlocks, special commands, whatever that might be. I think that there could be a lot of fun theme within the list building that rules that we have right now with Battalion. But it's just not there at this point. There's a couple of instances of some small things here or there where it's like, oh yeah, that is really fun. That is interesting. And I think one of those could easily be pointed to the chieftain that you had run, Sean, where it's like this chieftain allows you to take a unique unit that's only available if you take this special character. And also on top of that, this special character's pretty fucking cool. 8 attack individual. Nobody else really has that in the game. Let's go. Like, okay, I'm all in. Like, why not? I want to play a theme army that also has really cool units that also happen to be really good too. Win, 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 right? So I think if those types of things were implemented across 20 different armies, then we would not be really talking about the battalion system at this point and how it's kind of been a failure so far. I think that it's just lack of understanding of what armies need and the implementation of that throughout all 20 armies.
So what I'm hearing is this battalion system can work if the factions were balanced accordingly.
Balanced, themed, all of that. I think it's more than just balance, but in my mind, it's really the battalion system itself really incentivizes cool theme and cool structure from the top down when it comes to warlord choices, which impact your core opportunities, which impact your synergy within the army. And then those specialists / support units should probably just be the kind of extras that you add to fill in that main theme that you chose to take. So it's a really hard thing to implement, especially across 20 armies. But I think if it was done and done well, Kings of War would be one of the most interesting list building systems in the game.
Mm-hmm.
In games across war or tabletop games as a whole.
Well, that's actually I find that quite heartening to hear, because that means with the current structure that we have now, that can be achieved, because they are trying to do that but not hitting the spot right now, because there are warlord champions affecting the unit choices, moving them to core and whatnot, specialists, as well as heroes that benefit certain unit types. Just not enough to make it meaningful. Probably balance is one issue, flavor is another.
So to just clarify, I think a couple of things we talked about were saying that it's a bad foundation as a structure when it comes to the aim rule with how it interacts with shooting. Having that as a universal rule, that's a bad foundation. Having all units getting nimble effectively with extra pivots, that's a bad foundation. in my mind, the battalion system is actually a good foundation. We're just not building on top of a solid foundation at this point. We just need to expand and implement a lot of the thematic changes that I think would allow that to succeed.
That's good to hear. Sean,
Yeah.
are you of that thought?
I mean, I 100% agree with what you're saying there. I love the idea of theme forces, and I think like characters that take them. I mean, a lot of through third, when I was playing Forces of Nature, I was playing with Capocco, and Capocco was all about playing Verdant, and I was leveraging that Verdant because the Wilt Father had aura for Verdant, Capocco had aura for Verdant. You know, these things were. It didn't force me to design the list that way. I could have taken Capocco and no Verdant stuff. It would have been awful, but you know, I could do it. But it led me in that way. And I think that would be interesting. I agree with what you said about the Chieftain unlocking Guardian Brutes. Like that's kind of neat. I think, you know, I think that towards the end of third, we were getting that where a lot of the auras were. Look at Halflings. Halflings were split into Gastromancy or Tinker Tech, although they were it was just Tinkers. In third, same with like Twilight Kin. You were kind of getting, all right, well, how do we want to build around Void versus elves versus things like that? And I think those were really interesting and well designed concepts. You know, I think we had fun stuff that also worked on the table. So I think the battalion system could work, but you need to go, all right, well, how are we doing this? And how are we incentivizing people to take this? And how is this fun? And theme lists can be dangerous to implement. There's other systems that have done it. And it's like, well, if you're playing this, you better play the theme list because the base army isn't as great. So that's a fine line to walk, but I think it would leverage the battalion system in an interesting way.
Right. I, for one, have some issues with the battalion system. The main one being how to get 2 battalions because you need 6 core. That's a huge cost for some armies and next to nothing for goblins, right? So
well, that just needs to be scrapped altogether because with the idea of a themed army, you shouldn't be able to take 2 warlords that allow you to go down 2 theme paths. I think that if you just limit to 1 warlord, 1 battalion, and then allow for you to have more than 4 specialists or support, as long as you took enough core to get those, that solves that issue.
My suggested fix is slightly similar, only allowing 1 battalion, no limit of 4 specialists, 4 support. I don't know if there's a limit on 4 heroes, but if there is, there shouldn't be. Why I have an issue with the 2nd battalion is mainly because of 2 things. One is, firstly, you need 6 core to get a 2nd battalion, and the cost of it varies from faction to faction. Right? So then it also puts more emphasis on, well, do you have 6 cores worth taking? Is another problem, which worsens the situation of imbalance between core choices. I would take all of Adam's suggestion, except that I would allow 2 warlords because I think having that 1 warlord choice only also limits this diversity quite a bit. And some factions have a huge roster of warlords, and imagine you can only take 1. When you allow a pair of warlords, I think that kind of increases the diversity and the permutations exponentially. There's like, do I take, like for example, ogres? Do I take nom and which is my 2nd warlord? Or even there are 2 other warlords that are quite worthwhile taking. I'm going to take those 2 instead. You know, if you're limiting to 1, you know, it's very fast that people will figure out which is the best warlord to take. When it's a pair, seems more interesting. I mean, it's up for debate, and of course, you can tweak the power level of warlords to fit that system. The second problem another problem I have with the battalion is the limitation of units that has the bracket 2, right? And then clearly the game was designed with you only having 2 of them on the table.
Right.
Trombones, Commodons. Now there's 4. That's way too powerful. And for some factions, once again, it's cost next to nothing to do it. For some factions, it's still well worth doing it. Like Salamanders, they do have the Gekota to unlock that second battalion too. So, so good units, you can still have a bracket 2. You can have bracket 3. All right. You can have bracket 1, like if Void Lurker in Night Stalkers is a bracket 1, I think. Twilight Kin. Bracket 1, 235 point dragon, I think.
Yeah,
bracket
pretty
1.
good.
Yeah, so you already have the bracket system, right, to limit. So if that bracket system, that number system, is the limit of how many you can take in one army, then that works, right? Clearly, you only wanted people to bring 2 in the army, but they can do 4. And the cost of it varies because of, once again, the balance between core units.
I think I also kind of missed the 3rd edition where regiments unlock 1, hordes unlock 2 kind of thing. I think for core that would be good because like it not incentivizes you, but rewards you for taking the larger infantry units.
Agreed. There just feels like there, especially when you look at goblins, right? There's no benefit of taking a horde over a regiment right now. Like the price wise, as far as unlocks goes, right? Price wise, the unit may be, priced appropriately as far as effectiveness. But if all you're going for is just getting your unlocks for core, then why take a horde?
Yeah.
Generally, I do like that the horde the unit strength 4 now, as compared to 4 versus 2 on the regiment, compared to 4 versus 3 in the past. So there is a value there for hordes from a unit strength standpoint. Goblins is a different animal because you do want the maximum unlocks for all the support choices. Yeah,
I think there could be more granularity on unit strength. I think going to strictly, regiments or 2, hordes or 4 kind of thing was a mistake. Versus 3rd had, like I said, more granularity, especially with the expendable keyword. It just, I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, I don't think it's a huge issue right now, but it feels like a step backwards.
I agree.
it's a step backward. If they were to bring granularity, I would caution that it needs to be not too confusing. Like, how do I know this unit is unit strength 3, 2, 3 or 4, other than actually memorizing it by heart? So there should be some visual way to roughly get what's their unit strength. Like in 3rd, like the expendable, the cheap trash units are unit strength 3 in the horde, so that's understandable, and unit strength 2 in the regiment. That's at least somewhat, that's the rough system to go by.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, I think we've covered the topics we want to cover today. For Sean's post on Fanatics, I looked at it just now. 71 likes / interactions and 185 comments. Oh my goodness. So it's quite a lot of traction there. And yeah, hopefully some of these comments and feedback will fall on the correct ears and eyes, and we're gonna see a positive change in arrogance, and maybe some of the content that we discuss here on the live stream too will reach the right people for the changes we hope to see. I understand it's probably hard to implement all of it, but we do want we do hope to see quite a bit of changes, especially for arrogance. Yeah, and doing a live stream on this matter, I know it is difficult pill to swallow for some people who are still pretty positive about the game. And I mean, good on you to still be positive on this game. And in response to Sean's post, there were a few people posting on Fanatics about how they love the game. I mean, yep, good on you. But it's also a good thing to see the criticism and feedback about the game, right? And doing this stream, talking about this, I also thought about, whether we want to talk about the state of the game over the live stream. But I feel that I watch live streams quite regularly from various YouTubers from various genres, and I think the takeaway I have from it is honesty and authenticity is the best way to go. And I hope that this honesty and authenticity and our passion in wanting the game to get better shines through with what we've been discussing. Yeah, and yeah, I guess that's all I'd like to say about this. Probably should have said this at the start, but I only talk about this now. And yep, it's been a great evening talking to you guys. I know it's been quite late over there. I see the lighting on Sean's background change throughout the stream. And thanks for coming on. Anything you'd like to shout out before we close the stream?
I mean, I think like you said, we're here because we love the game and we want the game to get better. So, take any and all of my ideas, mix and meld them, do whatever you need. I probably have used up my allotment of words for the year. So don't expect another one like that.
I don't know, Sean. I heard it was all AI.
Yeah, apparently. Well, I've used all my tokens then.
There we go.
I did not mean it to be as long as it was, but no one's ever accused me of being terse. So
I think it was appropriate. It didn't feel like you dragged on. It felt like you addressed everything and then preemptively addressed many of the counterpoints that you expected to receive. And I think that's one of the reasons it was successful, honestly. You were very thorough, very thoughtful, and you relayed a lot of the conversations that I feel like have been had recently in person. So I appreciated it for one, and I appreciated, our conversation, everything we had at Masters. So I'm just glad you were able to join us tonight because it was a fun evening talking about Kings.
Yeah, and here's hoping we have more of those in the future. Because we have a game that we love. So
that's right.
Yeah,
thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just to wrap things up, I still love Kings the way it is. I've played War Machine, and it's still a great. I think it's still probably the best ranks and flanks game out there. So I still love to play the game, and I'll still probably continue to play it, even if the changes were not fully up to my expectation until the game sort of falls apart. We just hope it doesn't, because you're losing the players who are somewhat on the fence, right? And with that, shout out to Sean Jong, one of my local players, who has disappeared for a while. He's playing card games now. When do I see you back? Okay. And Luke Fraser says, thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Luke.
And thank you for the audience that's been listening so far. And thank you for to those who will be listening to it on the replay. I will work on getting it in a podcast format as well. So for those who want to just listen to the audio only. Right, with that, thank you very much, everybody. I shall end the stream. Bye-bye.
See you.